All right, guys, so we are going to get into our main topics here today now. But before we do not forget that you can actually submit topics and questions for us to address on this very show by emailing us at honestanduneducated@gmail.com. That is honestanduneducated@gmail.com. Then usually, once I get some more time on my hands, I will have some more collectible reviews going up, so, look out for those when I do get them. When I do have time to get those up, they go out every Wednesday, so stay tuned for those. Most recently, I've had a little, collection preview of those 3D tops I was just talking about. Recently, well, and if you've been following the channel for a while, this has been a kind of a thing that happened, a couple months ago, but I got all this lighting done in there and stuff, so I kinda showed that off primarily. Wasn't like a high def tour or anything like that. It was just a little preview kind of thing of how things are progressing at this time. That is up on the channel. And then also, we normally stream every Friday right here. So come hang out with us then. It's normally, I don't know, between like 8 and 9 p.m. is when we start Eastern time. So come hang out with us there, and we'll talk Bad Batch or whatever happened. It's kind of a weekly roundup, play some games, do that sort of thing. So that's every Friday. But let's get into these topics here. And this first topic here, as I mentioned off the top of the show before we got into the hot toys talk, we should really have our, we kind of do this on the stream in all honesty, but we probably should look into having a hot toys talk show. You know what I mean? Just a show dedicated to the hot toy.
Sure.
I don't know about how, like, if they had, I don't know if it would work all the time because there's not constantly new news coming out about them all the time. But we could figure something out. Because, I mean, as
Yeah.
we went on, there was still more stuff I coulda talked about with that shit, and we went almost
Yeah.
an hour talking, like, quite frankly. So there's
Definitely.
definitely some stuff there. But our first topic here, our first official topic anyway, we're gonna break down some of this Scarlett Johansson suing Disney over the Black Widow day and date release here. And the interesting thing here is, really, I don't know about interesting thing. But a nice little caveat to this is that there's another article that kind of shows that Kevin Feige is also not very happy with any of this stuff, which, I mean, it's good to see that there are some people, and we know this kind of too with Warner Brothers when they announced that they were going day and date with everything on HBO Max. Tons of the filmmakers, like, they blindsided everybody, like all the people who made the film, James Gunn, Denis Villeneuve, Christopher Nolan, and Denis Villeneuve and Christopher Nolan, them 2 in particular, spoke out very, abrasively against the Warner Brothers when this happened. Denis Villeneuve went and had he did a whole op-ed piece just shit talking them for doing it, saying they ruined Dune's chances of being a franchise by this and just et cetera, et cetera. Like, a lot of people in the industry are not happy about this day and date release stuff, and for good reason. It does affect their salaries, it affects their, future in, like Denis Villeneuve's main concern was like, you just killed Dune's chances of being a franchise because everyone's just gonna watch this thing on HBO Max. It's a fucking huge, expensive movie, because you're not gonna get any return in it, so you're not gonna let us continue making more movies. So it's like them and their paychecks aside, is like, yeah, obviously they'll make more money if with, based on their contracts and everything. Not everybody gets back in points on the movies, but if anybody does, it's primarily the filmmakers themselves and then your main actor and actress. Like, they would more than likely negotiate some sort of back end points to get more money off the actual financial gross. But that being said, with you're just putting it on HBO Max, you're not getting that box office. You're not getting any of that. So it affects, the outcomes there for the actual people involved, but it also just affects the movie overall. Like, you're not making as much money. And then, like, that ultimately is what determines whether or not the studio is going to want to make more of these movies. They need to see that there's a demand for it. You don't really get that kind of return if you're just putting it on HBO Max or Disney Plus in this instance with Black Widow. So, and John, it was interesting at first. We talked about this when Black Widow first came out. It was the first time, and I talked about this on the show. It was the first time out of all the films that Disney had put out on their premium access, the only time they came out and said how much money it
How
made.
much they made.
They didn't do that for any other movie. They didn't do that for Cruella. They didn't do that for Mulan. They didn't do that for what else did they put out there? I don't even remember. They didn't say it for any of them. I think this was the 4th or 5th movie that they done it with. They didn't come out and
Yeah.
say the kind of return they got for it because for the anything else other than Black Widow because it all was garbage. They didn't get a return for it. That's why they didn't say anything, and that's why
Yeah.
can't come week 2 of Black Widow, they didn't tell you how much money it made because it didn't make any money. Like, and that's the thing that's kinda like is, like, something they kind of are I don't know how they're overlooking it, but it seems like they're overlooking it in some ways because, like, the obvious things aside, where, someone could invite 20 people over to their house and spend 30 bucks and then bam, you miss out on that. But you're missing out on the return viewings. With Disney Plus and with HBO Max, especially with Disney Plus, we'll just stick with that because it's about the, Black Widow thing. You pay for it one time and then you just have it. You have
Sure.
it indefinitely. So, you just don't need it. Like, you don't need to go back and see it again in the theater. You don't have to rebuy it to watch it again on Disney Plus, which if you did have to rebuy it again on Disney Plus, no one would buy it anyway. But
Yeah.
that's a huge source of the income. You know what I mean? I think if they
Sure.
wanna do like, we'll obviously get more into the ScarJo Johansson thing before, but as far as the overall plan goes with this, if they wanna make this more of a thing, in my opinion, to actually make this semi day and date thing work at all, we'll probably talk about, like, something similar when we get into our Netflix and Christopher Nolan story here in a little bit, but they need to, like, put the movie in theater maybe shorten the window, maybe make it, 1 or 2 weeks, then put it on Disney Plus or something, but then, I don't know, make it just a rental, Like, don't actually have it out there because you lose all the repeat viewings, have it more limited,
Yeah.
like, maybe you only get it because like, if you rent the movie on Amazon, you get it for a reduced price instead like, so you can buy it for 15 or you can rent it for 5, but as soon as you start watching it, you only have 24 hours.
Yep.
Maybe do that. Like, if you wanna actually get 'cause they're missing out on, like not only are they missing out on, like, money just from the box office when they do this, they're completely cutting out the whole digital market. Because before, that's how things would be. When you the movie would do its theatrical run, and then it would go on digital, so you could rent it or buy it, and, like so it was 3 months in the theaters, then digital for, like, a month, and then after that, you could just outright buy it and go on Disney go on your streaming services and everything, so there was really about a 3 to 6 month period of time where unless you bought a copy of it digitally or physically, it wasn't available. But with Disney Plus, it's available, you spend 30 bucks and you're done. You're missing out on the whole digital PVOD market and everything. So it's not just like it's not just the movie being in theaters that like the extended time of the box office that they're missing. There's a whole bunch of the market that is just killing it. And with Scarlett Johansson here, the thing that kind of blows me away with it is like Kevin Feige's comments on it. He goes and says that he's obviously not happy initially with the day and date release because obviously just everything I just said. The money aspect is not good for business in general, etc. But he apparently pleaded with Disney to make things right with Scarlett. So, cause Kevin Feige, we talk about this off camera, Kevin Feige has a really good relationship with all of his actors and everything, everyone in their movies and stuff. Hell, all the original Avengers went and got tattoos together, so they all have a great relationship in general. And Kevin Feige's gone there's been numerous round tables that have Kevin and a bunch of the actors and everything. We're not best friends with them by any means, but it seems like they all have a very good relationship. So in my mind, I could guarantee you that Scarlett and Kevin probably privately talked about this stuff. And Kevin, based on what his comments actually are that we know, he probably kind of told her to move along with this stuff. Is what I imagine. Because
Yeah.
if he's telling Disney, "You need to work this shit out," and, because if you remember what I thought about immediately with this, because I told you, how the fuck did, Disney and, uh, Scarlett Johansson, how do they not come to and get in a meeting and have Disney pay her out? And, actually, compensate her something, fairly, because that's what Warner Brothers did at the very least. We don't know if they did this for everybody, but for Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, they paid her out, the both of them out, $10 million because they were supposed to get, what was it, a 10% return on the overall box office that the film made. So they went in and like under the assumption that this movie was going to make $1 billion, and they paid them both out accordingly. So they both got $10 million checks. So if Scarlett Johansson had percentage points on the box office gross for this movie, the average like price tag on all Marvel movies at the box office, the average gross for them all is $1 billion. So she should have been paid out $1 million,
Yeah.
like, at the very least. Like,
Yeah.
or if it's 10%, give her 10,000,000, whatever her percentage is, they should have just based it off that and paid her out ahead of time, but they didn't. So, like, now Scarlett Johansson is suing them because their contract stated that she was gonna be fairly compensated based on that money. And what really pissed me off with, this whole thing is that the comments that are being made by Disney are really fucking shitty. Like they go down to say, and then John, I want to hear what you have to say about this before I just keep rambling on here. But I'm going to
You're
read
good.
these statements here. And so in a statement to Variety, Brian Lord here says that Brian Lord is a writer for the New York Times, I believe. And they say that Disney has shamelessly and falsely accused Miss Johansson of being insensitive to the global COVID pandemic in an attempt to make her appear to be someone, or to make her appear to be someone they and I know she isn't. So they're trying to make it seem like Scarlett Johansson is trying to take advantage of, like, the situation here, essentially. They're trying to say that she is not taking into consideration that this is, like, a global pandemic, and it's, like, kinda scummy on her to do this during the pandemic because everyone's just trying to get by and, like, all this kinda shit. That's essentially what they're trying to say here. It's like, it's really insensitive that she's trying to do this during, like, don't, and it's like they're literally trying to weaponize the pandemic against her. And it's like like she's doing things that she shouldn't be doing, and she's, just like there's bigger things to worry about even kind of thing. Like, just a stupid comment. And then they go on to say Disney's decision to include her. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing too. They, in their statement they made, they literally released how much money like she made in general already, and tried to like throw that in like the face of like her. Like, she's already made $20 million off of this, so what's her fucking problem? Is literally what they're saying. And
Yeah.
they go on to say, like, yeah, she made $20 million off this, but who gives a shit? It was in the contract that she receives X amount of money or X percentage of money based on that, and you're in breach of contract, dude. Like, it's your fucking problem. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? What do you think about all this? Before I want to get your thoughts. We talked a little bit about this, but like off camera. But what are you thinking here? Because I think like based on the comments made by Disney, honestly, and whatever Disney rep is, what kind of blows my mind. They
Yeah.
want to say that they give no merit whatsoever to the lawsuit. It's like, dude, you guys have a contract. Like, the contract hasn't been leaked out. We don't know exactly what it said here. But for fuck's sake, Scarlett Johansson and her team of lawyers would not be filing a lawsuit unless they had ground to stand on here. So it's obvious that like there was something explicitly in the contract that stated X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So the fact that they're sitting here saying they have no merit, it's kind of annoying. What do you think about this? Am I missing anything?
No, here's my big thought on this. Scarlett Johansson has been a part of the I believe I'm trying to run it through my head, but I think she's been a part of the highest grossing Marvel. Not only is the Marvel Cinematic Universe the highest grossing film franchise of the past decade, Scarlett Johansson herself has been directly involved in the highest grossing films of the highest grossing franchise in the past decade. She was a part of Endgame. She was a part of Infinity War. She was a part of both previous Avengers movies. She was a part of Captain America. She was a part of Civil War. Those movies there, she wasn't a part of Black Panther, which I'm sure is in the top 10 there. But out of all the movies that they've done, she has probably been a part of 8 or even 9 of the highest grossing movies. At no point in that time did Scarlett Johansson sue Disney because the movies made more than she was contracted to get paid, and she felt like, hey, I was a part of the movie, was even more successful than we thought. You guys should give me a piece more, She used that ability, that her success and her willingness to want to be part of this, to establish a baseline for what she would get paid in future projects. And Disney agreed with her. I think Disney, whoever was working with her at the time, and maybe these people are gone, maybe the people with common sense are gone, but I think Disney at some point realized, yes, Scarlett, you have been a huge part of this overwhelming success we've had for over a decade now. And you know what? We're going to give you a $20 million contract to come back and reprise this role that we care so much about. We're also going to give you a percentage of the box office because we understand and value your contribution to this. They didn't sign this contract thinking that, you know what, well, we'll just, we're going to back out of this. This is partly, I'm sure part of the reason she agreed to come back and do that was because they did give her a lucrative contract. That it was a reward just not only for what she was going to do for this particular movie, but everything that she had done over the course of the entire franchise. All those times she didn't come back and play hardball for Avengers Infinity War after she had already been part of overwhelmingly successful movies in Civil War and Winter Soldier and the first two Avengers films. So you have to look at that as that's the reason this contract exists in the framework it does. It's not just solely on the fact that they thought this one movie was going to make X amount of dollars. It's also based on the success previously and her willingness to, be a team player, for lack of a better way to put it. So for Disney to come out and like release the statement that they did, you and I talked about it. I mean, we had considered not even covering this because we thought it was kind of just a silly thing, and the lawyers would figure it out, and she will hopefully get paid what she should get paid later on. But then Disney comes out and just has a PR nightmare of a statement that they release, and I'm going to read this real quick. Hopefully, it doesn't. It's not real long, but it's about 5 paragraphs. I actually had a moment of panic earlier today when I thought about the implications of what this one event could do to this film franchise that I love just about more than anything else, ever in the history of entertainment. So this is an open letter to Disney, and Bob, is it Chapek, the COO or the CEO of Disney?
Yeah, the new CEO. And speaking of which, before you
the-
get into to that real quick, there's another thing that we should probably at least caveat here. There's a lot of unhappiness in the DC, or not the DC, the Disney camp right now in general with this day and date thing that they've decided to do, which is all pretty much Bob Chapek's plan. Like all of this
Mhm.
stuff with making Disney Plus a new driving thing has been like it's all like it's a big company. There's a chair, a board, and all that shit. But like it's Chapek's thing. That's like his prerogative to do. And there's a lot of people in Disney who don't want to do that. You know what I mean? And Bob Iger is still the chairman of the board, the previous guy, the good guy. I don't know, he's a businessman, but he seems like a nice guy. But Bob Iger's the guy who got Disney to where it is today. But he is on the
Yeah,
way out. So, like, he's obviously not on board with anything that Chapek's been doing here, but he has no ground to stand on because he's leaving. So, like,
yeah,
because a lot of people have been wondering, like, why doesn't Bob Iger just fire him? He's the chairman of the board. It's like, well, this is pretty much his last year. It's not really his place to do anything. Like,
yeah,
everyone knows he's on his way out. But like, like there's a lot of unhappiness in the Mouse House in general because of all like prior to this happening, people were unhappy with like a lot of the stuff here. So I'm curious to see
yeah.
what you're about to read though, because I don't know if I've heard it yet. So
So it was just an open letter to Disney, and if you, what's the saying? Like, was it 5 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon or whatever? Is it 5, 6 degrees of separation? 7? I can't remember what the number is. But if
something like
I'm
that.
only separated from Bob Iger or Bob Chapek by a few degrees, if you know somebody who knows somebody who knows them, pass this along for me. But an open letter. I grew up a DC fan. I liked Marvel, but when it came time to spend my allowance, DC got my money. Not anymore. I love Marvel. I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I spend way too much money on movies and merchandise. I get giddy whenever a new trailer or casting announcement comes out. As a kid, I grew up in the 80s and 90s when comics weren't cool. I feel like I'm living in a dreamland because of the success of the MCU. Comics and superheroes are not just cool, they more often than not dictate what is cool. When Disney bought Marvel, I was initially worried for the same reason every fan is worried when a multi billion dollar media empire buys something. How will they mess this up? Star Wars. Somewhat surprisingly, Disney appears to have let Kevin Feige and Marvel continue to do what they do best, make incredible movies and now television shows, and push out an untold bounty of related merchandise. Or more simply, they print money. They print money for Disney and their shareholders. I understand the pandemic has sent the entertainment industry into a tizzy. I know that you, Disney, are trying to figure out the best way forward and trying to navigate an ever-changing landscape. But you cannot have gotten to the where you are by being oblivious to common sense decisions. I understand that you have financial responsibility to your shareholders, and those dividends need to keep being paid out. But they need to be paid out just as much 1, 2, 5, and 10 years from now as they do at the end of this year. Short-term gains mean nothing if you risk a cash cow long-term, which is why I'm completely baffled by what is going on with Disney and Scarlett Johansson with regards to the Black Widow movie. I understand the movie did not make what Disney probably hoped it would, and that sucks. I'm sorry, but a lot of people have been hit a lot harder by the pandemic than just having a handful of films not turn out as profitable as they had hoped. Now we are hearing that Kevin Feige is not happy with the way things are transpiring. Some lackey that clearly didn't understand their salary has a lot to do with the success of the MCU over the past decade releases some ridiculous press statement trying to paint ScarJo in a bad light. And all I can think of is the dark days of the 80s and 90s. Please let calmer and smarter heads take over and get this situation settled. Pay ScarJo what she is asking. Everyone and their goldfish know is a drop in the bucket compared to what the MCU will generate in revenue over the next decade. Or continue to let the untrained monkeys in your legal department make a mess of this situation. You will be left wondering where it all went wrong, but you can just read this back if you ever had that question. Alienating leadership and actors that make some of the best entertainment ever is not worth an extra $5 in the next round of dividend checks. Beyond the MCU leadership, the other actors that are part of this franchise are sure to be looking at how Disney proceeds and take that into account when deciding if they want to be part of the MCU. You have to be able to see that. Thanks for stepping in to take care of this. And then I have a little just silly, if you feel so inclined to thank me for providing my simple solution, I would be happy to accept an all-paid expense to the next Marvel premiere. So,
Oh, that's
but
all
yeah,
you're
that's
asking
kind
for?
of.
You should ask for more than that.
No, I'd just be happy. Fly me out and show me the next premiere. But I mean, it feels like a really simple solution. It feels like a really stupid thing for Disney to be messing around with. I mean, you've got this just huge, phenomenal success story on your hand, and you're going to quibble over. I understand $50 million is a lot of money, but in the long run, with what this franchise is worth, it's not. So
No, it's not,
yeah,
and, like, you made a good point, though, too, and because it kinda harkens back to what I was saying with, when Warner Brothers announced the day and date thing and made everybody all of their they betrayed all their filmmakers. Everybody who had
yeah,
a film coming out this year was completely blindsided by the information. They didn't consult with any of them and work anything out beforehand to say, "Hey, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. We're gonna put all these movies out, but we know that your contract stated, X, Y, and Z, so we're gonna give you this in return." They didn't do anything. They just said, "We're doing it." Like to the point where literally Legendary was going to sue them because Legendary paid for I think over 50% of the goddamn Dune movie. So they didn't
yeah,
even consult with Legendary, the people who they were in partnership with, about what they were gonna be doing with their movie, like, their
yeah.
collaborative and so, like, Disney's kind of doing the same thing here. They haven't done it to such a degree, but like they did with Pixar, they've had 2 Pixar movies come out this year that went straight to Disney Plus. They didn't even give them a chance at a theatrical run. And, like, I totally get it, like, some of like, during, like, for the longest time, the theaters weren't open. Like, they just weren't open. They had no choice. They had to get some movies
Sure.
out, like, totally makes sense. And I get that Disney like, I've said before, like, Disney, if they wanna do the Premier Access thing, they do need to try it with more than just the couple of movies they've done it with to see if it's a viable thing for them in the future. But, I mean, it's just you can't you signed a contract, it's like it goes both ways, like, you have to just you pay out the contract, make it work,
Well,
like, if it's just kinda
yeah.
stupid.
Well, and like you said, though, you mentioned this earlier, and like you were just talking about, you look at what's happened with there are real consequences to these decisions. Um, in the case, something we're going to talk about a little later, I think, is Christopher Nolan is possibly out there shopping around for a new company, a new production studio, a new distributor to work with, and he's been a mainstay at Warner Brothers for years, but yet they have alienated one of their you know, biggest money makers with this decision. And I don't want to see Disney go down the same path with the MCU. I don't want to see Kevin Feige start looking for greener pastures. I don't want to see the actors and actresses that are involved in these movies go, you know what, if they did that to ScarJo after the 10 years of her commitment to that company, I'm not sure I want to get in business with these guys. You have something good going on. This isn't a, it's not worth, like I said, it's not worth the extra $5 you're going to throw in the dividends at the end of this year to give up, hundreds of dollars in dividends, thousands of dollars in dividends that are coming in the years to come from a successful MCU. So,
No, you're
yeah.
absolutely right, and that's the thing too, like, the talent and, like, not just the actors, like, you know what I mean? Because like you said, like, Christopher Nolan and, like, everything that happened with Warner Brothers, like, all these people, they don't wanna work with the studio itself anymore, so it's not like just the
Yeah.
actors who are, like, gonna be shooken up by this, it's like the filmmakers that have just as much to lose, if not more to lose, and it's like, you think, like, what's a better outcome here? Like you said, like Kevin Feige, if he starts wanting to go like somewhere else, like doesn't want to put up with this shit anymore, and this maybe he wants to go do his own thing. I wouldn't doubt that Warner Brothers has given him a call during this whole thing. Like
Sure.
I wouldn't even like I'd be shocked if they didn't. Like
Yeah.
honestly, it's like if you come over here, dude, well, you can do whatever you want.
Carte blanche. Like we're getting everything out of the way.
Yeah,
Like,
we already let
here's the
James do
Brinks.
it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Here's the Brinks truck,
yeah,
and
like,
here's
I'm
your own wing. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Because 'cause we've seen,
Well, and
like, it's not the craziest thing in the world. Like
sure. Well, and the other part of this too, the streaming part of this, I haven't really talked. I was talking more focused on this specific situation, but then the overall just general idea of the streaming and like I understand streaming. I understand the money that's involved. You're talking about billions of dollars a year in revenue off of subscriptions, and we'll have to see how this all plays out because Disney or not Disney, Warner Brothers, while they're doing day and date this year, has already said that they're not going to continue that into next year. So what the question then becomes is, do their streaming numbers then drop because of that? Do people unable to get day and date access? Do they actually stop there? Or was this a kind of like one-time thing that got people in the door and now people are sticking around with the service and they don't need to do day and date anymore? And Disney's kind of the same way. Like Disney, can you accept the fact that you did this just to get people in the door and then you will keep them through other means rather than going day and date with these films? And if so, if you're able to keep them other ways, then why not just pay Scarlett Johansson? That's, you got what you wanted out of this. You entice people to sign up for the service, to get access to Black Widow in their home. And if you're not going to continue this method of distributing going forward, and do you need to continue this method of distributing going forward? Is it worth it? So I don't know. The whole
yeah,
thing's a mess.
it's definitely too early to tell, like, with, what the streaming stuff, even though it's kinda been around in general for a while, but the whole day and date release thing is in its infancy. That's why I said with them trying to do this Premier Access thing, like, they obviously need to try it more times. But if you're gonna try like, I think in the future, they need to really, like, work the shit out beforehand. Like, you know what I mean? They need to honestly do what Warner Brothers did with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, and like work the shit into your contract beforehand. Like if you're gonna
Yeah.
do a day and date thing, like, because obviously this came out of nowhere. Like, and so like the pandemic it forced people to do this. But if this is going to be a thing in the future, I would just certainly hope that they would have the foresight to actually work the shit in to the contract. And if they don't, and they're so inclined to want to shift something like Black Widow to a different release schedule, you got to work it out, like Kevin Feige
Yeah.
wanted them to do. And it's like you just have to you guys signed the contract. Like, you gotta honor the contract when it comes down to it, and, like, they're trying to weasel their way out of it through legal jargon, just pretty much because of the fact that it did get released in theaters, and there was probably no byline or fine print in there that said that they could not do a day and date release. That's what they're gonna be leaning on. It's like, we guarantee a theatrical run, and it's in the theaters right now. We never said that we wouldn't do this, and that, and they did, and that's
I
gonna be what they're standing on, like.
I've read a few different articles. I'm almost sure that Scarlett Johansson was either told or it was in the contract that it would get an exclusive theatrical run.
Okay, well,
That the
if
word
it says
exclusive, and
exclusive,
that's
yeah,
even more damning to Disney's case, I
yeah,
would think.
yeah, if it says exclusive, then that's when it comes down to too, is then you have to look into what the lawyers will be looking into is like, well, what defines exclusive?
Exclusive, yep.
Yeah, and like where can they weasel out of that in some way? You know what I mean? And that's why, like, despite
Like,
everything that Warner Brothers has done, they at least had the balls to fucking own up to it, and they paid
sure.
Patty and Gal $20 million.
And it
Like,
appears that they've also paid other people because they settled with Legendary over
mhm,
theirs. Like Warner Brothers realized, "Oh, crap, we probably should have been talking to more people than we did," and,
yeah,
"Alright, let's get it figured out now so it doesn't become a media S-storm like this
yeah.
thing has," so,
Yeah, because 'cause they've already pissed off enough people, like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is, so, like, on that note, I'm excited to see kinda what happens with because it's interesting that they had James Gunn come over, Warner Brothers, and just let him do whatever the fuck he wanted. Then they
Mhm.
throw this thing like, I'm curious to see what, like, their working relationship going forward is going to be after this, because I'm sure to this day, like, even now, despite all this stuff, they're gonna let James Gunn do whatever the hell he wants to do. But, like, obviously, we have the early word of all the success of, at least review-wise, of Suicide Squad. We'll have to see how much money it actually makes. So I'm sure Warner Brothers is gonna just let him come back and do whatever he wants, but is he going to want to? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's like we said when we're gonna talk about later, like, Christopher Nolan, like, have they ironed things over with him? Because it doesn't seem like it. Like,
Yeah.
is he gonna be gone? Like, so I'm curious to see how all this shapes up. Because like you said, Kevin Feige be the same way here. Maybe he's done. Maybe he's getting a little fed up with this shit too. Like, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. Everything's a little too. It's too early to tell. But I'm very curious to see how everything is gonna
I
work out
I'm
here.
I'm I'm going to go into a very deep depression if we the day that Kevin Feige announces he's done with Marvel because of something like this. I
If
would
it's over something like this, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Like, I would like, obviously, you want someone like him to leave on his own terms and have him put the people that he wants in the position of power to do his job, you know what I mean? Because we talked
Mhm.
about before when,
That have the vision and the
yeah.
experience to craft and keep
Mm.
this train running on time and like it has been.
Yeah, because he's already said that, because now they're having, like, these multiversal meetings, and he had a comment in this article we talked about a week or 2 ago where he already has these kind of people in place that he does trust that are already working, like, in the company, like, with him. Like, cause he said that, like, there was, like, 2 or 3 people that he said, like, they went and they did, the Loki show, and it was, like, all on them. Like, they did it, and
Mhm.
then they had the same
Mhm.
thing happen pretty much with all the Disney Plus shows, like, he put people in charge of that stuff, and they went and they fulfilled his vision for it. Like, he didn't have to step in there and do anything, like, they did it, and it happened, and it was successful. So, he's already getting his people. He's more comfortable with all of the people, like, the people he has in place. But you want him to leave and those people to stay and not Kevin Feige leaves because he's pissed off and takes everyone with him and leaves everything in shambles, Like,
Yeah.
so we'll just have to wait and see. I'm curious. We gotta move on here, though. There's a lot to unpack here. There's still a lot more to unpack outside of this. So, but guys, what do you think about all this? Do you think that Disney's just gonna actually, like, honestly own up and do what they need to do? Like, does 'cause I know there's some people out there who are buying into the comments from the Disney rep who said, "Well, she's already got $20 million from this. What's her problem?" Like, that don't mean nothing. They negotiated that. That's what she got. They also negotiated that she gets this, and they're not giving it to her. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's just a problem. So, I know there's people out there who just wanna attack people and just make me like, "Oh, these rich people are yeah, but yeah, the rich keep getting richer." We get that, but, like, Disney's got the money, and they signed the contract just like she signed the contract, and in my opinion, they just need to honor that shit and move on. No need to ruin anything, burn bridges, ruin relationships, kinda ridiculous, but whatever you guys think, let us know down in the comment section below.